honestly, the analysis. I mean, the analysis of the game is kind of interesting. It was a fun game. But the more important part is the story about this round. This was the final round of the external competition, and we technically had a chance to get second place, and the top two promote to the highest division of the regional competition, at least. In the highest division, I looked it up. There are like 10 people that have titles, and basically everyone is 2000 rated plus. So it would be interesting to play there, and we technically had a chance, but it was out of our hands. We were in third, top two promote, but we at third place were playing the fifth place team, and the second place team were playing the fourth place team. The fourth place team technically could still promote by beating the second place team and us either drawing or losing against the fifth place team, and the fifth place team could still relegate by getting seventh, but I mean that's really only technically possible, because then for that to happen, the seventh place team needed to beat the first place team. So yeah, it wasn't gonna happen. The first place team had never lost a match, so yeah, unlikely. But yeah, the other teams, so the second place team and the fourth place team, played yesterday, and the fourth place team managed to win. So we needed a win against the fifth place team to get to get second place and promote. So I'm just going to say that happened. We did win by 4.5, and well, that's basically the only thing that matters. This game, I mean, I got crushed, but let's look at it anyways. I think it could be interesting as well. So my opponent started with d4, and I was planning on I was looking at some things in d4 lines as a preparation. I actually prepped after knight f6 that if my opponent would go into a London, I would just accept that, and I learned a bit about how to play the London. Saw this interesting line. We play c5 here, knight bd2, queen b6, attacking here and here. And this is apparently just the main line in this variation, with some move order things, and the line goes like this, which is a bit crazy. And you usually win this pawn, but it's usually just drawish anyways. But yeah, so I looked at this, and I also play a lot of things against d4 anyways. My opponent just played c4, normal stuff. I played e6 and knight f3, so I could move order trick my opponent into a Benoni, which my opponent was okay with. They had they know all their stuff. I mean, they have to. They're like a 2000 plus rated player, and I believe we had a discrepancy of 202 rating points exactly. So yeah, it's they know their stuff, and I just have to try to survive as black on the first board, and hope that everything goes well. So yeah, we're playing a Benoni, which I know quite a bit of. Knight c3 first, of course, g6, e4. And the reason I played this move order is because there's no f4 here. In the if you play the normal Benoni, which goes c5 here, then this d6, e4 there's f4 here, which creates this issue. And you have to play this, otherwise e5 comes, and you're still just bad. Position is still bad. It's really difficult to play, and you never get a6, b5, despite it looking decent. But yeah, with the knight here, then there are other lines. So e4, bishop g7, h3 to prevent bishop g4, which is fair. Castle bishop d3. And I did not know the main line here. Apparently the main line is to play a gambit here. b5, knight takes b5, and you can take on e4, kind of. You can also play like rook e8 or something. But you can take on e4 as well, and do this. And my opponent also mentioned that my opponent mentioned this to me, so they knew the line better than I did, which is not great. There's this trick here, knight e6, which is crazy and absolutely winning. Kind of a funny. Yeah, this is +1. Yeah. But yeah, you can just play knight takes e4. And, not sure what else you'd play here though. Maybe just queen a5. Yeah, queen a5 anyways. h6 is apparently fine. But yeah, because I'm already worse here. But yeah, I didn't know b5. I don't want to play b5. The alternative is a6, which is the normal move, and then you get a4, and you can never really get b5, but it's okay. You also prevent knight b5, so you can play queen c7 for free without getting kicked or anything. Knight bd7 and bishop f4 happened here. There's some lines. I believe here you can play queen c7. I looked at this with the engine at some point. I think it was this exact line. Maybe this bishop was somewhere else in that line. And the engine recommended knight e8, which I learned after that. I think maybe it's not exactly this line, but let's see. Engine prefers knight e5, but knight e8 is interesting as well. And knight e8 is what I did. My opponent castled. And here I probably should have... It probably doesn't matter. I played knight e5 here. And my opponent after a while took. This is kind of the idea of knight e8, by the way. You just defend the pawn so you can play knight e5, and then the knight you eventually take back with the pawn, and the knight plants on d6. So my opponent took with the knight, and here I didn't really remember how to take back. I believe I remember taking back with the bishop, that you should take back with the bishop first. But in the game I was unhappy with bishop h6 here, and if you go back then my knight is just bad. And on knight g7, we looked at this. I underestimated my plan, because after f4 I just have check here and f5, and I'm okay here. I think I'm okay here. We're still playing, but yeah. So I should probably take with the bishop. I took with the pawn instead, and then bishop e3 happened to attack this pawn. Queen c7, because I wanted to plant the knight here at some point. But now a5, and I can't ever really defend the bishop or defend the pawn. So yeah, I had some issues to solve here. Knight d6 I think is a actually I didn't play knight d6. We looked at this. I think I played the correct move. There was an issue of knight a4 threatened, and it's like in a lot of lines if I just, let's say, do this, knight a4, take, no, not here, not there of course, bishop takes here and my rook is trapped. And on knight d6, if don't play h6, of course. If I do this, then you get the same issue. And now my knight is pinned. Try this, but then I mean, you have this, I believe. Is that good? Oh, bishop b6, of course, yeah. Maybe you don't play rook d8 then. Oh yeah, oh yeah, this was the line that we looked at. Knight b6 and knight c4, and you win the piece. So yeah, you can't do that, which I saw correctly. So I didn't play knight d6, I played bishop d7. Preventing knight a4 because I just take. And then rook takes, and I think that's fine. But queen e2 happened. My opponent is trying to prevent me from pushing this pawn, which would mean that this pawn is permanently weak. If I could push it here, then I can at least defend it. I can probably play b5 at some point as well. Maybe bishop b5. So I tried knight d6. There are many things that... This knight is beautiful, and there are many things it does. And it has to be beautiful because this pawn is great as well. It has to compensate. Which was also the plan. But this knight supports this, and supports this, and sometimes supports this, and sometimes supports this. So it does everything. It also blocks this, which is important. My opponent just pressures this pawn, prevents c4. Apparently, we looked at this. What I did is fine, but I should probably just play rook c8 at some point and force through c4, which I think I can do here. And rook c8 would force bishop c4 because c4 itself is strong probably. Although maybe if you just do nothing, let's say this, c4, you get like bishop b6 issues. But here I can take, because this hangs in the end. There must be a... yeah. I just want to look at c4 and... what's the issue? Oh, you just take... Oh yeah, and knight is pinned, of course, and you just win. Fair enough. Yeah, that also works, of course. So I didn't like playing for c4, which... yeah, so... after b3, I didn't ever play rook c8 to try to defend this pawn or push it. I did what I think is correct, which is f5. I can always do this, by the way, because f5 threatens here, which is quite strong. Also threatens here, which is also quite strong, because then I can hold on to the pawn forever if the bishop is kicked. f3, f4, bishop f2, I think is all correct. I considered just leaving this b, but then I'd have to play rook c8 again, which I didn't want to do. So I tried to find alternatives, basically, and what I found is that the way to attack, or what I tried to do is, at least, is the way to attack this pawn is to move the rook to the c-file and then get rid of the knight. And the moment the knight moves, I get b5. Not pawn b5, because then you take and this crashes as well. Even though I win the b pawn, I still lose a pawn in the end. But I get like bishop b5, which I also did not really think was correct, but my opponent thought it was correct. So I played g5 instead, trying to do basically a King's Indian and, well, this setup, and try to go for checkmate as my compensation, hopefully. That was my attempt, at least. Rook c1, rook fc1. And here I could do this, or I could just play my game. What I decided to do, my opponent thought that h5 was the move, but I wasn't even threatening g4 at that, wouldn't even be threatening g4 at that point, because my opponent can take twice, and I'd need to play queen c8 to put pressure on if the so the issue is that if I played h5 they can just move their knight, which was the plan anyways, and after this they can just take twice and I'd have to attack like this, but rook is an issue. So I can't do this, so this wins 2 pawns. But basically I can't play g4, so I instead tried to play it a bit slower. I played rook f6. Point is that the rook goes to g6. Where were we? Rook f6, knight d1, still attacking this pawn. I can't defend it, and I played bishop b5 with the point that when attacked, when my queen is attacked, I can go to d7. I can also trade here and plant my knight on b5 to prevent infiltrations, which I thought was correct. Bishop takes c5, take here. I thought maybe they could take here, but they just played easy. And I played knight b5. There's no discovered attack or anything. That's why I moved the rook, by the way, because it would be attacked anyways, in another way, or if I didn't, yeah, whatever. Knight b5. I think this is correct. b4, and here I just moved my queen to d7. There's no discovered attack, but still, queen d7 is good to g4 again. And here I thought I thought I was losing, but because I am, but I thought that knight c3 and just getting rid of my knight would be very strong, and then bishop b6 and rook c7. I thought that was strong, but my opponent played knight f2, which gave me some hope. Not really, because it's really difficult to get this now, but still. h5 is basically mandatory, otherwise knight g4 comes and the knight is great and I can't ever do anything. This hangs, and yeah. Rook c4, which would make sense, of course, but I was wondering maybe I could do this. No, I can't do that because of knight g4. But there is maybe some some pin or something on the b pawn, so you can't run away. You can't run to b6 is basically the point. But you have knight g4 and winning the e pawn. So yeah, h5, and now rook c4. Now I can't do this because the pawn is defended. So I tried rook g6 with the point of slowly pushing the g pawn. My plan was to, well, I didn't want to sack. My plan was to play this, play bishop f6, then sack the pawn, play bishop h5, h4, and if they take here, then I take here with check and get rook g3. The queen comes in. Maybe there's some play here. Basically, the point is that I want to sack this pawn to get this bishop in and attack the knight. And if the knight moves, I can just take back, and then I can take here, and then I'm fine. But yeah, I need my rook for that. I also need the other rook for that, actually. So I played rook g6 here. Rook ac1, of course, makes sense. Bishop f6. Still didn't play g4 here. But here, my opponent plays something smart. Instead of waiting for my attack or trying to infiltrate in some way, which I don't see. Maybe you have d6 here, but that's it. I think you have d6 here. You don't. You do have d6. d6 is definitely still winning. But my opponent instead just started running with the king. King f1. King got to here. Yeah. king of 1, I played king h8. Maybe I should have gone king h7, but I wanted to keep this open as an option. It doesn't really matter anyways. King e2. Now I don't actually need the second rook technically, but this is not check. And you get rook h8 if I play g4 here. I think you get rook h8 and I'm in trouble. So instead I just played the rook h1 anyways, which I also thought was, I mean, it's really annoying, but it's off of the c file, so my opponent's win is delayed by quite a bit. Here I basically ghosted some. I thought that h4 was actually a thing in some lines, or I should, yeah. I thought that I needed to defend the h-file at least if I wanted to ever play g4. So I played rook h6, which is, I think, okay. But it just doesn't do anything, and g4 is just never gonna happen. Yeah, rook h6, there we are. And the king just keeps running. Bishop d8, and now I think everything is protected now, so I'm not really sure how my opponent continues, and I think it's kind of difficult for my opponent to also find a plan, but I mean, I made it easy for them at some point, so don't worry about that. E3, bishop d8, queen b3. I got rid of my bishop on this diagonal, protecting this pawn. So now my opponent can go here and attack the pawn, and knight here and attack the pawn. And I have to defend that. I decided to do it like this, bishop c7, queen b2, queen d8, and plant my queen here. Because this also creates some issues here occasionally, if I ever want to push g4. So they didn't even play knight d3 here. They just play king c1, queen f6, which I think is, maybe it's fine still. King b1, rook e8, king a2. Yeah, it got there. So I basically, if I ever want to try anything with, and not, instead of very slowly getting crushed, I have to do it now. My pieces are basically perfect for it. I just have to play b6. It doesn't work, but I just have to try it anyways. So my opponent just takes, I take back, and plays rook d1. And there are some a5 options sometimes. I also have these types of plans, or here, or something like that. So I played rook h7 here, which I think is still fine. But now d6 comes. Actually, maybe I should have prevented that. Maybe the move here is queen d8 or something. I think that prevents this. d6, because I think I can just take it. Yeah. Yeah, that just sacrificed the pawn. But yeah, d6 comes here, and the reason I thought that this was still fine is because I had queen e6 pinning here and preventing d7, so now afterwards I can just fix this, and I could try to plant a knight on e4, I thought. So queen e6, but my opponent plays rook d5, which is very annoying. So it doesn't even work. I play bishop a7 because my bishop is hanging. I really can't take that. It's just garbage. knight d3, and my original plan was to play knight d4 here, but that also just loses everything. And my opponent said that they would play this, which is and it's just over for multiple reasons. Also, these pawns are running. But yeah, so that's what I could have done. Instead, I tried this and bishop d4, basically hoping that my opponent would play something like that, and then I could continue playing. But still, I mean, this is still nothing, and my opponent also has bishop e5 here, which is also just game ending. And here I resign. So my game doesn't matter. I was done relatively early. There were 2 games done before me, a win and a draw. And so I tried to go analyze my game with my opponent for a little bit. We got like halfway. We basically looked at the most important parts. And then I came back to 2 games left. We had 3.5 points. We needed 4.5 for a win and a promotion. And the 2 final games looked very drawish. The board 2, which started out looking like really terrible. Board 2 looked like, I mean, we lost a pawn and it looked bad for the rest of the game. They got a kingside attack as well and looked terrible. But in the end, we came out they got into a rook endgame, 3 versus 3 pawns, where the opponent had these. Actually, they had these 3 pawns because our player was white there, and our player had these. Both had a rook, so it was very close. But it's basically a draw. But we might have had some chance. On the other board, we had basically also a rook endgame, but our side was up a pawn. The opponent had these, and our player had these 3. And this one was like here, and these were here. And this one was here, and this one was like here. But this one was really scary, and there's a rook on the 7th rank blocking the king here. So it was basically still a draw because of the pressure of f6 and checkmate threats. And instead, instead of the opponent got their king here to the corner, this pawn to here, traded the pawn for it, allowed a promotion here on the b file, I believe, and then got what's called, I'm not sure what it's called in English, but it's called a crazy rook or something, where you basically keep sacrificing the rook because it's stalemate. So the end position was like this king was here, there was a rook here, or the position that I saw. We had queen here, there's a rook here, and the opponent was just giving checks to the king. So it was basically just a draw anyways. What happened though was that on board 2 our player was thinking of if they could just accept a draw, of course, and play for a draw, or they could try to play for more, but then they would also play, if you play for a win you also play for a loss. So they were thinking about it and eventually decided to play the drawing move and then flagged. So we lost, which was crazy. So it all came down to that queen up endgame where the opponent had a crazy rook, and our player managed to get the king to the g file, blocking the rook. So after the rook gave check here, they could take, and suddenly it's no longer stalemate. So we actually still won, which was crazy. Absolutely unnecessary drama for the final 10 minutes, but yeah, crazy that we won that, despite it being a double draw, we managed to lose and win it. Insane. So yeah, we promoted and we're playing against 2000 rated. All of our, like half of our team is 1800, half of our team is 17 high, 17 mid, 17 high. And we're going to play against title holders, and everyone is 2000 plus. It's gonna be fun. We're gonna get crushed, but it's gonna be fun. And I'll hope to meet you. Oh yeah, I meet you there. And I forgot to analyze my game with the engine. Let's quickly do that. Yeah, engine doesn't like this. I know. Yeah, castle, bishop d3. Apparently you should play b5. My opponent mentioned that. I didn't know that, and now it's +1 and +1 again. Yeah, I should take with the bishop. Oh yeah, I wanted to look at this. I thought that bishop h6 was annoying. Bishop takes h3, queen h4 as well. You have to just sack the exchange, because knight g7 is still bad. Queen h5. Only drawing move is this, and then it's still... yeah, it's just... you can't ever block with the queen, because then you lose a piece. So you have to just accept the perpetual. Okay, I learned something. Apparently bishop h6 isn't scary because you have a perpetual, but if you just play this, then we thought this and king h2 and f5 and you're still kind of okay, but I mean you are, but we're still playing a Benoni, right? So we're still worse. Apparently we should sack the exchange. Maybe I would have done that actually. Oh yeah, you also have knight e3, so it doesn't knight e3. But yeah, now it's just terrible. I played normal moves in the line, but now it's just garbage. I maybe should have played b6 here. And on a5, cry. But yeah, still knight a4 is apparently very good. But yeah, knight d6, and now I'm kind of not really okay, but yeah. Rook f6 is one of the top engine moves there in this position. That tells you that the position is bad. Yeah, I should have probably kept the bishop, I think. Yeah. Oh, you can't take on d6. Okay. Then this is correct. Yeah, I also thought knight c3 obviously, but you know, I can see winning moves for my opponent, but that doesn't matter. I mean, the question really is, what do you play as white? You're up to +2, but like, it's not easy. And b6 is apparently... yeah, it's one of the top engine moves, but everything's just garbage. Yeah, knight d3 is on its way, and I think this is basically the best moment to do it. Yeah, and now d6, and it's just terrible. Apparently you do need to find one of 4 moves, basically. I also really like this notation. It says rook c1, which is forced to be... come on, give me arrows. Which was forced to be this one. So you don't... because this rook is pinned, so this rook can't go here. So rook c1 is just... this is the only rook c1 in the position. So you don't have to say rook dc1, which I think is funny always. But yeah, you have to either defend the rook with the queen or play rook d5. Which makes sense. Rook c1 is the only bad move, and that's reasonable. King b3 is also reasonable, I guess. Kind of, not really. But now I'm better. Haha. Bishop takes c5 and rook b7 or something. Yeah, okay. But yeah, it's just all game over. This is apparently an okay attempt. But yeah, you just have bishop takes e5 and it's nothing. So basically I had no chance whatsoever due to my opening. I really think that maybe I should just quit the Benoni. It's not really my style. I mean, it is my style, but it's just not good enough. Yeah. And this happens. If my opponent was well prepped, and this just happens, +2 everywhere, and it's just dead. But yeah. This was the last round of the season, so I'll see you whenever. Probably in like August or September probably, something like that. See you there.